It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for starting your day with us. And no, Paul Harrell is not here, even though he was sort of for a brief moment or two before we jumped in. Paul is on vacation for the rest of this week. I'm Jan Morgan. I'm going to be filling in for him. And we are so excited that you have decided to join us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine here at Conduit, and we can't do it without your help. There are many ways that you can help us at Conduit, and we want you to stay engaged with us and stay engaged with our government. Of course, you can do that by logging on to their new website at www.conduitnews.com. There's also a phone number you can call throughout this show if you wanted to get more information, if you want to join Conduit and actually be a paying member, which is always good because they could use your support. The number is 870-275-9799. I have with me today Senator Linda Collins-Smith, and I asked Linda to join me because a lot has happened since you've had a Labor Day weekend off. And let me just tell you, it has not been good. Certainly not been good for the Republican Party, and it's not been good for the state of Arkansas. Listen to what happened. If you got away Friday, this came down Friday. And of course, I wonder how much of that was planned in advance to release it on a Friday of Labor Day weekend when nobody's going to be around their TV sets or reading their newspapers. But this is big. It's really big. We've had this corruption probe that's been leading to, and has already led to the convictions of 5 Arkansas lawmakers. Well, it flared up again as of Friday with the indictment of the chairman of the State Senate Judiciary Committee, Republican Jeremy Hutchinson, of course, related to Governor Asa Hutchinson. Related investigations by the U.S. Department of Justice and the Arkansas Attorney General's office span at least 3 states, folks, 3 states. But the sad thing is, it's not over yet. And of course, the sentencing phase for a number of those that have already been convicted will begin this week, this Wednesday. I think it's tomorrow, exactly. So, Senator Linda Collins-Smith, this has been a tough past year for the Republican Party and for our lawmakers. And of course, I wonder how you're feeling at this point about what's happened.
Well, you're talking in reference not only to Jeremy, but to the legislators who are being indicted as a whole and those that are charged. It's very disappointing. I think it's embarrassing for the state of Arkansas, obviously. And we've already have an issue with trust with our government officials, elected officials. And I think this has just compounded that. And as you know, I requested Senator Hutchinson, along with Senator Rice and a few others, for him to go ahead and resign once an announcement was made before on charges he has not yet been charged for.
Well, he resigned. He decided to resign. So, and just so you know, in case you haven't read the papers or you aren't up to date, he was indicted. Jeremy Hutchinson was indicted on 12 counts of wire and tax fraud, accusing him of misspending campaign donations and underreporting his income on federal tax forms. Now, Linda, I don't feel like calling you Linda, yes. Senator. It's my understanding that some of these guys didn't actually think they were going to end up in jail. Now that it looks like some of them are actually going to jail, do you think that we're going to hear more? Do you think that there's going to be more people talking and telling more than they originally said they were going to?
Of course I do. And that happens as it gets closer to the time to go to court. That will happen. And I can't imagine they would not, in order to cooperate with the either FBI or whoever the other law enforcement is. I think that they will do that, and I would advise them to cooperate. And I'm like I said, I'm very disappointed. And what we saw, by the way, with Senator Hutchinson, we've seen some folks make the comment, Jan, that this is not what we thought he was going to be charged with. But it's not over yet.
It's not over yet.
There's
right.
More to come.
These are the lighter charges that could come. As you know, this investigation was involving fallout for the investigations. Let me just kind of let you know this. The cost of one of the largest behavioral health service providers in Arkansas, all of its state's business, all but 4 of the 14 people charged. And so we've talked about 5 lawmakers, and now Jeremy Hutchinson 6. 14 people overall have been charged so far as a result of the investigations that have direct connections to the provider Preferred Family Health Care, which is in Springfield, Missouri. That involves employees, attorneys, lobbyists, board members, etc. You know, what we're going to cover in this show, we're going to try to get to all of it, but these are some things that I wanted to cover with you, Linda, as well as with the folks. You know, corruption in state government is a serious problem. We're going to talk about the legislation that was put, that you guys, and I think Terry Rice, or was it Brian King? Yeah, wanted to put out that would kind of put some walls up that would prevent this sort of corruption, and it didn't go through, which is absolutely unacceptable, folks. When you have a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate, there is absolutely no excuse for Republicans not doing the right thing by the people and passing legislation, any kind of ethics legislation that's going to make it, that's going to hold our legislators more accountable, has to be a good thing, is it not? And I'm going to ask you more about that in just a second, but we're going to cover the corruption in state government. We're going to find out what it's costing the taxpayers. You know, it's not only is this an embarrassment, it's a costly embarrassment for not only the people who've been arrested and some convicted, but for all of us. Your tax dollars are paying for this investigation, and we're going to kind of do a quick rundown for you on that. It is also eroding the public trust, as if we didn't already have issues with lawmakers on the state and federal level. Now we have more reason for the people of the state of Arkansas to not trust their legislators. And that's hard on good legislators who haven't done anything wrong. It's hard on all of you. How it's dividing the Republican Party, I hope we're able to get to that today, because it certainly has. And we've got some sound and a videotape with Jim Hendren, Senator Jim Hendren, that I think you'll find interesting, related to this division in the Republican Party, and he was contributing to that. And then we're going to find out, we're going to talk about why the Republican legislators voted down that ethics legislation, and then what you can do, what the people can do. What do we need to do now to kind of make a difference in this? So, Linda, I want to go back to this legislation. You guys tried to do something to put some ethics legislation out there. What happened with that? Why did it not go through with Republicans in control?
Well, because they fought it on the Senate floor.
Who's they? Can we name call?
We'll go and we'll name names. So,
yeah, I want you to name names.
Yes, we have to do that. And I think that's part of what you mentioned earlier, is that there's no trust. And we talked about that. People need to be able to trust again. But as a legislator, if you've not done anything that's illegal, you certainly don't want to be put in that same bucket.
Right.
Name names, but don't put me in that bucket. Don't put others
and
that haven't
you name
done
names,
anything.
that's right.
That's right.
And we know we've got some dirty Republicans. We know we do.
And
just
Democrats.
Like and Democrats are dirty.
That's
you know, both parties, all parties have their problem areas. But you know what I wanted to do when you called me in, last year before last, to get involved in state politics, and
year before last now.
Yeah, I bet some people wish you'd never contacted me, because I was out there on the national level. For those of you who don't know me, I was out there on the national level doing work for the folks of America. And Senator Linda Collins Smith is one who drugged me back into Arkansas and said, "You need to help me. We've got some problems here." And boy, do we ever! I had no idea. So what was the legislation? What would it have done?
The legislation would have actually put some teeth into the actual problem. When we are held down with this new ethics issues that Senator Hendren and Senator Dismayne are leading, those issues are going to, that ethics plan, to me, is going to hinder legislators from doing their job. The people have already vetted them. The people have already said, this is who we want. We know what their history is. We know that they have this background, and we elected them. So when they come in with knowledge of things, we need to use that knowledge. They should not profit from it. That's where the crimes come in. When you're profiting, if you're bribed, those types of things, you should just do a full disclosure.
Well, the gift fund was part of the issue. And has that not been eliminated? I know the Arkansas Supreme Court said this is unconstitutional.
Right. And I think that when you're looking at taxpayer funds, I'll give you my personal opinion before I go back to the bill that you asked about. I believe that if we have additional taxpayer funds, it should be distributed back to the people, not to one person, which is our governor, who has control over it to decide where he wants it to go.
Right.
And so I prefer that it's spread back to the communities. That's my personal opinion, if there's additional tax dollars. And so and actually it's not the general improvement funds that cause the problem. It's legislators who decided, and agencies that needed to take money and put it in their own pockets instead of doing what their job was. That's the failure.
Right, because some legislators wanted to actually do something with it that would have helped counties, struggling
Sure.
counties, for example, fire departments, rural county fire departments that needed a new fire truck and they didn't have the
Yes.
money. I think that was the original purpose. Voting machines for counties that needed to
Sure.
replace bad machines and they didn't have the money. I think that was the original intent of that money. And then all of a sudden it was being sent to political buddies who
Yes.
own private businesses. And suddenly we were picking and choosing business owners to get nice gifts, financial gifts from the government.
Right.
And I know, like the governor's discretionary fund, he gave what, $950,000 to Taekwondo and Associates so they could have a new building in downtown Little Rock. There was over $250,000 given to Ben E. Keith Company. There are businesses in this state. It allows legislators, lawmakers, and a governor to pick and choose winners and losers.
Right.
And I think that's wrong. And I think the people, if they had a chance to vote on that, would say that it's wrong too.
Right.
That's not where we wanted our money to go.
On the bill that you asked about, when we get back to that, the person that fought it the hardest was Senator Hutchinson on the floor. And he really
The ethics legislation?
on that ethics legislation, he fought it really hard. It would
I
have
wonder
affected his
why.
livelihood.
Well,
That's
yeah,
correct.
it would have affected his livelihood.
But it would have helped taxpayers. Taxpayers would have kept money in their pocket. There's more accountability. If we do not have legislation and we do not have ethics issues or bills that have teeth in them, we have to punish the criminal and we have to let legislators go do their job.
Okay, but I want to know names. Now, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson was a Republican. He fought the ethics legislation. What other Republicans fought it? Because he alone couldn't have stopped it.
Senator Trent Garner fought it. To some point, if you watch the video, is pretty much felt like Senator Hendren fought it. He voted for the bill, and I thought that was good. But he did not. I think he was very uncomfortable doing it, but he did it. And Senator Bond had questions, but he really did not fight that bill. And so those were the main players in that that I feel like if you go back and watch that video, because Kenny Wallace came and videoed that. And so there's actually, if it were not for citizen and or people like Conduit media coming down and taking maybe AFP and citizenry coming to the Capitol, which I'm so proud of our activists to come down and take those videos or be in committee rooms where they can get that recorded, we would not have that record.
And isn't it interesting? That's one of the things I talked about when I was on the campaign trail, because I listened to people, and people around this state said, I want to be able to know what my legislator, what my representative or my senator is doing on my behalf, representing me in my district. And I can't find out. It's hard to get the information. So, one of the things that I wanted us to do, and I've yet to run into any taxpayers who don't agree with me, and that is we want video streaming of all our votes, all our committees, and we want a roll call vote so that there's also a written record of how each of our representatives votes on every single issue. That way we don't have to, depend on somebody's word.
Right.
So what are the odds of that happening?
I think that it's coming. And I wish time and time again that we had a record of what was said on the Senate floor. There's so many times I wanted to refer back to that, and it's not recorded unless citizenry or one of the groups that I've mentioned come to the Capitol and records that.
Right. Well, we're getting close to a break here. They let me know we're going to have to go to a break around 6:20. So we're going to continue this conversation about corruption in Arkansas government. The first day I went to the state capitol a year and a half ago, the moment I walked into that Capitol building, it just felt dark. It felt, in spite of all the light coming in, there was just an ominous feeling there. And there were conversations going on even at the elevators where people were openly saying, how much is it going to take? How much is it going to take to legislators, representatives? And I couldn't believe how open the discussions were. So these are some things that have got to change, folks. And corruption in government, hopefully that these indictments these are just the beginning. There's going to be much more coming down the pike. And we're going to talk more about corruption in Arkansas government, what we can do, how much it's costing you, the taxpayer. And we're also going to talk with Josh Waters of Conduit about some statements that Senator Hendren made, referring to Conduit as, well, comparing it to a terrorist organization. You're not going to believe this. We're going to find out what Conduit thinks about that. And we're going to have much more with Senator Linda Collins Smith after the break. Welcome back. We're so glad you could join us in case you are just now waking up. I'm Jan Morgan. I'm filling in for the vacationing Paul Harrell, a very well-deserved vacation, I must say, he and his family. I hope that Paul is relaxing and not watching us and worrying about his show. He picked a heck of a time to be absent because it seemed like as soon as he left town, everything happened, and not for the good. You know, we had, in case you're just joining us, we've been talking about government corruption in the state of Arkansas, and we have already had 5 lawmakers indicted, convicted, and now we've got a 6th. Senator Jeremy Hutchinson on Friday, just before the Labor Day weekend, was indicted on fraud charges. He was indicted on 12 counts of wire and tax fraud, accusing him of misspending campaign donations and underreporting his income on federal tax forms. He was accused of spending that campaign money on lavish personal vacations, gifts, jewelry, clothing, all those things that we're not supposed to do as legislators with money that doesn't belong to us. So, and there are specific guidelines, ethic guidelines that are supposed to prevent that from happening. And of course, this is Senator Linda Collins-Smith. She's just joining me this morning to talk about some of these issues. And before the break, we were discussing with the senator, you know, the legislation. She was one of the senators who was trying to get legislation passed that would put a wall up and prevent some legislators from taking bribes and accepting kickbacks. And yet it did not pass, which really upsets me because we have a Republican-controlled House and Republican-controlled Senate. So we have no excuse for not doing good things for the people of Arkansas. And ethics legislation, Linda, would have been a good thing, was it not? Can you tell us more about the bill? Do you have the bill number and information about that?
The bill number, if you need to look this up, was SB 726, sponsored by Senator Rice and I. And we fought hard on that piece of legislation. And it was sad because we want legislators to go down and not have special interest or their own interest. And I think that that's the caution that when the attorneys were given a loophole, so to speak, to do the, the bill and to get it passed, to make sure everyone was up and up. When you're even an attorney, you should not benefit from a single piece of legislation, for instance. You shouldn't profit from it.
Well, I've watched when I went to the state capitol.
Issue, yes.
Right. I watched, and by the way, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, the one who was just indicted Friday, is one who fought the hardest against this ethics legislation. And so I've seen Jeremy, Senator Hutchinson, as well as others, play political games with legislation in committee so that it never even gets out of committee. I've watched that, and I couldn't believe some of the things I've seen happen to some very good bills. You know, the people don't understand, well, what happened to this bill and why didn't it get voted on? Well, it never even made it to the floor because it died in committee. That happens often. And if we had video cameras in these committees, people would be able to see who's saying what and who's not representing them well. So I hope that there will also be a push to get those cameras. Linda, we also need the ability to recall legislators. A lot of people don't know this, but you know, because some states like Colorado, when they had some Republicans run as Republicans and they turned out to be rhinos. Other than that, the people of Colorado were able to recall those bad legislators almost immediately. And we need that same kind of ability here in Arkansas. Why do we not have that?
Well, I think that's partly your legislature. And I think we need that in any, with anyone who's in power. We need to have something. And however that particular legislation is set up, however their laws are set up, I would need to look at that specifically. I always say that. I want to see what it says.
Well, we're going to have you look at that. We've got it. We're coming up on a hard break now, so we've got to go again. But we will be back after the 6:30 point, and we have much more of news and information from the #1 source of Arkansas conservative news and politics, Conduit News. Please stay with us. Not Paul, just Jan. Paul Harrell's on vacation. I hope he's enjoying himself. Paul, we miss you, and I'm sure the audience misses you. There's just no one like Paul. He is the captain of the Liberty Machine at Conduit News, and I'm just glad to be kind of next in line behind there to fill in for him. And it's an honor to do that today. With me is Senator Linda Collins-Smith, for those of you who are just now joining us. And Senator Linda Collins-Smith is one of my, if you look at the voting record, if you look at the Conduit scorecard, you know, that scorecard is amazing because if you want to as a citizen, if you want to know, if you voted for someone because they're a Republican, and we all know what the Republican Party platform says that Republicans are supposed to be, but if you want to know not what a legislator says he or she is, but what their voting record reflects of them, because therein lies the truth. Conduit actually publishes on an annual basis the voting record of our legislators. So if you want to see how conservative, because Republicans are supposed to be conservative, right? So if you want to see what their voting record is, you can check out Conduit website, www.conduitnews.com, and find out what your legislator looks like. I know that Senator Linda Collins Smith was your number 2. Senator Brian King, who's going to be on with us in the next hour, was number 1, I believe. You were number 2.
And I've been
So
number 1.
congratulations
so always
on
at
that.
the top. I'm proud of that. I'm always within the top 10, but always at the top. And because that's who I am. I'm conservative. And I believe in our platform. Right. And that's important. So be a platform Republican, not just a Republican. Follow your platform.
Let's talk about that a little bit,
Sure.
because, this has been I have a bone to pick here on this whole issue, because the Republican Party platform is very clear, very concise. It's in writing. And I'm just wondering if some of these people who've run as Republicans have actually read it, because Republicans are supposed to be about limited government. They're supposed to be about cutting spending. They're supposed to be about shrinking the size of our government. They're supposed to be about, serving the people and getting government out of the way of the people, out of the way of businesses, cutting regulatory burdens, bringing regulatory relief to business owners. And we haven't seen that. And I just don't understand it. Senator, when we have Republican-controlled House, Republican-controlled Senate, and a governor who's Republican, why are we not seeing some dramatic progress made in that direction?
And it's because the leadership of the state is going a different direction than the platform of the party. And I think that that's obvious by what is supported, Jan, and to the people, and by voting records. And if you look back, you can find out how someone is actually, that's the true, not that you won't change your vote and you can't learn, but legislators create law. They change policy. And remember that they are responsible. We have to look at the policy, make sure that we're doing the best we can to follow that platform if we're believers of that, and run on that ticket as close as we can, and then take account, responsibility. If we feel like we've made a mistake or someone brings up something that we didn't know, that's what a good legislator does. Then they go back the next time and they vote differently. And I think that's very important. And no one's perfect. You're always going to have, I'm imperfect, but I work very hard to try to follow the conservative, lead. That's who I am. And that's how I'm going to vote. And it's nothing better, Jen, than my district saying, Senator Collins Smith keeps her word. She voted just like she said she would do.
Exactly.
When she ran the first time.
Exactly. And, part of the problem there is the voter. Yeah. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But you mentioned the leadership of the state. And I want to touch on that because, knowing that Senator Brian King was the number 1 most conservative voting record in the state of Arkansas. Senator Linda Collins Smith was the 2nd most conservative voting record. And the leadership that she mentioned, and I want to be more specific, the governor of our state actually openly endorsed and helped fund the campaigns of primary opposition for Senator King and Senator Linda Collins Smith. Now, why would you try to remove some of our most conservative Republican legislators? Why would you do that? If you're conservative.
Because you don't like the way they're voting. And that's a sad day for Arkansas, and for the Republican Party has really, each committee, Jane, has responsibility. What is their number 1 job? To elect conservative, qualified Republican candidates. Let's say they're elected. That doesn't mean you quit looking at whether or not they are conservative. And if they're not, remember what's your number 1 job duty in a committee. It falls on them to elect qualified conservative Republican candidates. Always their job. Right. And they need to always follow. It's kind of like I said in Northwest Arkansas, and I was there. I saw an article come out with Jenna De La Rosa, something, little tidbits. I've been in the hospital. So I have to say that I read that and I thought I was there, and I posted I was there. So I know very well what happened that night because I was visiting. I've been asked to speak in that area a lot of times, and I was in a neighboring town, and I just ran over to hear the program at the neighboring committee. And I was so proud to be there and saw great friends and great conservatives. And it's kind of like someone mentioned about the Bible. How do you know if we're voting conservative if you don't hold the Bible when the preacher's preaching? You can't know if he's preaching the word. So remember, look at your voting records.
Exactly. But, I would think, too, that our legislators would also, in the legislative committees, and you've been talking about the Republican committees, I'm talking about the legislative committees, that they would also look at every bill. Number one, if it doesn't pass constitutional muster, it should never make it to the floor. Okay. Rather than looking at, I'll do you a favor. If you help me get this bill passed, I'll help you get this bill passed. Well, rather than trying to gain support like that, why don't legislators just go to the Capitol and say, I'm here to do this because the people of my district sent me. I'm here to represent their will, not yours or some lobbyist or whatever. Why is that not happening?
Well, I had I'll bring up a conversation that I had with a friend of both of ours, and that's Gary Epperson of Patriots of Act 746.
Snickers, nickname. I'm going to tell everybody his nickname is Snickers, okay? Just so you know. If you see Epperson, give him a Snickers bar and you'll be in good shape.
I think he'll be fine.
Yes.
And he's tall and he can handle it, so give him a Snickers. And but it's because we have lost in the education world, in our schools, we are not teaching the Constitution. We know it.
The Bill of Rights,
so that when we go there as legislators, we don't eat, live, and breathe it all the time. You don't just know all the time if you've crossed a line or if you're getting there. Maybe you're working to get back to that and you've got to work back. That is a big deal in the legislature. Sometimes you can't always get there at once.
Right.
So timing, everything's critical in a piece of legislation, but knowing the Constitution and knowing what our unalienable rights are, which is different, maybe mentioned in our Constitution, but knowing those unalienable rights and fighting for those, and I think knowing it inside and out so that when we're talking, we can know it, that I think is a key. We've got to educate our children. We have to eat, live, and breathe it so that we know it immediately if we're crossing a line, and are we coming back to the Constitution if we're whittling our way back.
Well, speaking of that, getting educated on the Constitution, Chrisanne Hall, a national level constitutionalist, a lawyer. She is an amazing, you're talking about, if you want to get educated on the Constitution, this woman is all that and a bag of chips. She is amazing. She's going to be in Arkansas speaking at a number of different cities. So you're going to get the chance to hear her. I know she's going to be in the Hot Springs area in February. I think, Reggie, you need to give me those dates, or get me the dates for me so that we can pass those on to people. But if you just watch from my Facebook page, I will certainly be announcing it. Look at Patriot 746 page. They will announce and let you know when she's going to be in a city near you. But if you get the chance, it would be a great evening to take the whole family and really get educated, because that is where we are having some issues, on a number of fronts, not just the Second Amendment, but the First Amendment. And so, getting educated is one way that we can win and we can start solving these issues. But another way that the people can help, because I told you at the beginning of the show, we were going to talk about what can you do? It's frustrating. There are a few of us who are engaged, who are plugged into what's happening at the state capitol, and getting madder by the day because so many people in Arkansas are not. And I understand people have got, you got to work, you've got kids to get ready for school, then you got after school activities. I understand. I was a parent before my kid graduated. I do understand. But there are so many ways that you can stay engaged. Even if you just get up every morning and listen to Paul Harrell from 6 to 8 a.m. or 6 to 7 or 7 to 8, you're going to get a good dose of what's going on. But people have got to vote. In this last primary election, 18%. Now I want you to listen to this. Listen to this number. 18% of the registered voters in Arkansas voted in the May primary. That is pathetic. It is a pathetic testimony of the epidemic of apathy in this state. And folks, if you want your government to get better, if you want all this corruption to stop, you're going to have to get involved in your government. You're going to have to pay attention, not to what these politicians say they are, because during campaign season, we have learned that they just lie. They lie. They do. So you can't just listen to their commercials and say, oh, he's doing a great job, or she's doing a great job. Look what she says she did, or he said he did. You have to actually do your homework. So,
And Jan, one of the things I say to people, know your legislator. Know them across the state. I go across the state. I know a lot of people in the state because of the way I vote. They contact me or I contact them. And it's very important. They are your legislators. Get to know them. Build a relationship of trust. And if you can't trust them, you might want to look back, decide what you need to do in the next election cycle. Because remember what I said, the job of the Republican committees are to make sure that we have good qualified candidates. The next thing is the voters. You have to vote, and you have to check out your own legislators or the candidate.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Republican committees after the break that's coming up shortly. But before we go to that break, a couple more things I wanted to cover with you about you, the future. You know, we're talking about people getting engaged. You did not win your primary, which was just mind-blowing.
18%, and no close primary.
Right.
In one county.
So, yeah, and that does hurt. You know, that's something else we need to look at, because I know for a fact in a number of the small counties that I traveled, because I went all over the state over the past 7 months. Yeah. And I had Democrats, independents, and Republicans, even Republicans tell me, I would like to vote for you in my county, but Jan, I can't, because I'm going to have to vote on the Democrat ticket, because when you vote in the primary, you have to choose either Republican ticket or the Democrat ticket. And I'm going to have to vote. I need to vote on the sheriff's race or the county judge's race, and they're only Democrats running, and I want to have a say in that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they had to vote on that ticket. So, you know, that is a problem too. People need to be able to vote for the person, not the party. And I would like to see that change too.
But we do have party platforms for a reason, and that's the accountability. That's where the party committees need to hold their legislators accountable. If you don't think the Democrat Party has not done that, they have. And in the past, they've done it very well. As a matter of fact, too well.
Oh, no, wait. You're talking about in the state of Arkansas. I don't know about that.
Yes.
Well, on the federal level, they certainly haven't, because they're not Democrats anymore. They're socialists.
Well, that's why I'm saying that we need to do a good job with making sure that the party platform means something. And we need to make sure committees, that's your job. Citizens, that's your job. You've got to elect the people that will hold to the conservative values you have.
It's because how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel as a conservative, a true Republican, to hear people out there in our state say, you know, you can't tell the difference anymore. Republicans or Democrats, they're purple now. We don't have a solid red or a solid blue. You've got this purple legislator, and you know, there should be a very definitive line and difference between the two parties, and it's not happening. And I'm sure that's the reason Donald Trump is our president now, because people said very clearly, not only in this nation but in Arkansas, the people said Donald Trump. So I think the people in Arkansas, they were paying attention then. I just wish they'd paid that much attention to our state politics.
I think leadership would. I wish they would too, and recognize that we voted for two of the most non-established, and the votes went to Senator Cruz and to Donald Trump.
Right.
And that's
outsiders.
telling, and we should be paying attention, but somehow our leadership seems to be saying it doesn't matter. But I think it matters to the people of Arkansas. We're either going to get them to where they're not voting at all, they're going to quit voting again.
Right.
And they turned out for Donald Trump and
yes,
protect Cruz overwhelmingly in our state and in this country. Remember, and in this country. So I think that we have to be bold, and we have to be kind, and I think you have to be respectful of your legislators. If you want to talk to them, make sure that you're respectful of that. You will not always agree, but you can bring up your issue, and they will be thinking about that. They will think about what you said. And so I think that's important. Get back to getting to those legislators and let them know how you feel about the way they're voting.
So what are you going to do when your term is up?
I think I'm going to let you guys text Paul, and let's see what on Conduit. What should Linda do next? Won't we have fun? Because I have to let the good Lord open that door.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
We need you at the state capitol every single day.
Yeah, well, you can't
being
lobby,
their
you
worst
know?
nightmare. Because Jan Morgan, you know, it was almost like everybody, you know, when I walk into the state capitol, it's like, oh no, she's here. You know, you could see people texting, and can you imagine if there were two of us?
Yes, I remember saying it could be worse. Me winning the election, at least you know what I'm doing. When I'm not, I said, that's when you have to beware. So, I can do what I want to. So I think that I just have to trust the Lord, and policies were always thought that I was supposed to be during all of this. So I want to affect policy. What does that mean? I don't know, but you guys send a note. Let's see what Linda should do next.
I know what you should do. We'll talk about that after the show. I want you to stay engaged. We're counting on it. People love you in this state, and I'm telling you, the reason that happened is 18% of the voters, people maybe just assumed you had it made.
Yeah, there was one county we did not win. The others were, handily, and it was just there was 18%. There wasn't enough turnout to pull that back out. But I'm very proud of the votes we got in all the counties. We just needed a few more. So
gonna run again one of these days.
Let's see what the good Lord says.
Yeah. Okay.
Take it a day at a time.
Okay. All right. So we've been talking about corruption in Arkansas state government. We've mentioned in this past hour. Thank you, Senator Linda Collins Smith, for being here with us. When we come back from the break, we're going to be talking to Senator Brian King. Senator Linda Collins Smith was number 2 out of all the state senators for the most conservative voting record. And this is a woman who was a Democrat. Can I say that? So, yeah, at one time, and you were transformed.
Yeah,
and not only did you really transformed.
Oh, yeah, but I'm always conservative. I have a good record, so that's good. I am a conservative person.
Right. Well,
and I heard the Democrat Party was, but somebody lied.
Yeah, somebody wasn't honest with you about that. So after we come back from the break, we're going to be talking more about the Republican committees, because the Republican Party is divided. It was divided before all of this corruption happened, and now it's even more divided than ever. We're going to talk about why and discuss that a little bit with Senator Linda Collins-Smith after the break. And then Senator Brian King coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, along with Josh Waters, representing Conduit, to discuss some comments made by Senator Hendren, another relative of Governor Asa Hutchinson, who compared Conduit, the state's #1 source of conservative news and politics, compared Conduit to ISIS terrorists. Yeah, he really did. We're going to show you the video. We're going to show you the video. You're going to see him, you're going to hear him, and then we're going to get Josh Waters' response to that. That and much more after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. Man, this is early for me. Senator Linda Collins-Smith is joining me. I'm Jan Morgan, filling in for a vacationing Paul Harrell. We've been talking about corruption in Arkansas state government and just hoping and praying that the people of the state start paying attention, because if you don't pay attention, get engaged, and do something about it. The voter is how you change things. People have told me, they want to disengage when you get so fed up with the government, whether it's federal government or your state government or your city government. The easy way out is to just back off and disengage and say, I can't do anything about this. This is overwhelming. It's too big. We're lost. It's over. But you know what? Our founding fathers never gave up. If anybody ever in the history of the world had a right to say, this is too much, this is too big, it was those guys when they were outmanned, outarmed, freezing to death, starving to death, trying to fight a battle against a well-armed British army. Most of our colonists were, even without clothes, starving to death and barefoot, many of them. And yet, talk about a reason to say, we can't win this, we can't fix this, we're doomed. It was those guys, and yet they didn't give up. And that's why we have to stay engaged and stay in the fight. I've heard people say, and I've heard people recommend, don't vote. The voting doesn't work. Look where it's gotten us. Well, what's going to happen if you don't vote? What's the outcome there? Exactly. Because we just saw that in Arkansas. 18% of the registered voters bothered to vote in the May primary, and look what happened. We lost 2 of our most conservative Republican legislators. So, folks, you've got to stay engaged. You've got to get engaged. Let's talk about the Republican Party, Linda. Okay. So, because Republicans toiled for decades. Yes. Great Republicans like Dorothy Crockett. And I just want to give a shout out to Miss Dorothy. She's recovering and she's had major heart surgery. And, Dorothy, I call her the queen of the state Republican Party. She's an amazing lady. And she's indestructible. The woman just defied all odds and survived major open heart surgery. And so we're glad that she is mending, but people like her toiled for years when being a Republican was like having leprosy. There just weren't any. Yes. But now Republicans have control of everything. We truly have a chance to make a difference for the people of the state, and it's not happening. We're doing we're going the wrong direction. So
that makes it very hard. It's very hard to keep it energized, and people say, well, what good does it do? We worked so hard. Well, for those people, others have to jump in there and work hard for them when they're kind of down. We've got to help them out as well.
Right. Well, I mentioned that the Republican Party is divided, and here's why. You've got and that's not just in Arkansas. It's nationally. We know this. Okay. Yeah. It's growing pains. Okay. People worked hard for years. They toiled. Now the Republican Party has a lot of power on the federal level as well as the state level in Arkansas. And what are we doing with that power? What we're doing is messing up. And pretty soon the people are going to be saying, well, look what happened. The Republicans said, just give us the controls. Look at all those, look at all the corruption and bad laws that when Democrats were in control. So give us the controls. We'll fix things. And now look, we've got corruption. We've got increased taxes. We've got increased government spending. We've increased government spending by over $600 million, folks, in the state of Arkansas over the past 4 years. With Republicans in control. We've got to fix that. And see, that's why people like Senator Linda Collins-Smith and that's why I got in the middle of all this, because, folks, it's disparaging the name of the Republican Party when we don't live up to the Republican Party platform and the policies. And so what we're seeing is committees divided, Republican committees across the state divided. And just recently, and we're going to play after the 7 o'clock hour, right after the 7 o'clock hour, we're going to play a video where the governor's relative, Senator Jim Hendren, recently stated at a committee meeting, he compared Conduit, which is the state's #1 news source for conservative news and politics. He compared them to ISIS terrorists. I think he should resign over that alone. There are other reasons as well, but you know, that kind of language. And he further stated that he felt like that they shouldn't be allowed to speak at committees. And the reason that really rubbed me the wrong way is because deja vu, I've heard that before. Jan Morgan, coming out of that same family, from the same family, the same message was sent to committees, the Republican committees. Jan Morgan doesn't need to be able to speak at committee meetings because she's divisive. Why? Because she's talking conservative. All I was doing was talking about the Republican Party platform and saying, hey, folks, remember what we're supposed to be? We're supposed to be all these things. Well, we aren't that anymore. So we need to get back to that, or we're going to lose control of our state, and because we're letting the people down. They said that those things are what they want, and that's not what we're doing. So Linda, what are we going to do to bring this party together?
Well, I think we go and make sure we speak loudly in your committee. That's where you have to make changes. If your committee,
so if you're not a member of the Republican committee, you need to join and get involved.
If you believe in the platform, they need help. If there are too many liberals in your committee, you got to elect more conservatives to bring your platform back. And they have to be willing to speak up. It's their committee. It's their future. It's our state. And we have to be a part of what is changing in our country. We have a president that we voted for in Arkansas that we need to get out there and support his elected, the senators and all, and Congress that support our president to make change.
Right.
And we're not going to have it unless Arkansas participates. Because let me tell you, Donald Trump and every presidential candidate on that ballot came to Arkansas. They want ours. We have a voice.
Speaking of Trump, I've never really considered President Trump a conservative, but he has done a lot, has he not? We are out of time. We're hitting a hard break. Senator Linda Collins Smith, always a pleasure having you. Look forward to visiting with you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. More Conduit after the top of the hour. Stay with us.